So Death Battle is on its mid-season break now, and that gives us a lot of time to think about season 7 so far. From the absolutely stellar tracks some episodes have given us to some fantastic animations to the ad where Boomstick talks about erections. Even my least favorite episode of the season isn't awful, and my favorite of the season so far is for sure in my top 10 favorite episodes of all time. Close to making the top 5. And while there's a lot I could go over with the 10 episodes we've been given so far, for now I'm going to look beyond the horizons to what's coming next. Beerus is my second favorite Dragon Ball character, as well as one of my favorite fictional characters of all time, and I've been hoping for him to get into Death Battle for a good while now, but I've never really had an opponent in mind for him. Until recently, that is. Though Death Battle likely won't go with the match I want, I can still give my thoughts on the match. It would be boring if I just went over one hypothetical match though, so I've compiled a list of matches I like and matches I think are possible, and I'm just gonna go over each of them and say who I think wins. But I haven't researched a single character for this video, so don't expect the results I predict to have any accuracy at all. So let's get started. Let's start off with the boring ones. Death Battle has an overabundance of Marvel fights. Everybody knows this by now. And there's a very real possibility that they'll have Beerus fight another Marvel character. I can guarantee right now that it's not Galactus. There's no way they would cheapen his confirmed fight with Unicron by not having it be his first. And the size difference seems like it would be a pain for them. This isn't like Broly vs Azura where it's just a single form for one character to use at the end of the fight. They'd have to deal with the size difference for Beerus vs Galactus for the entire fight. So it's safe to say they're not doing that. The match I can't guarantee they won't cheapen though is Thanos vs Darkseid. It's not likely, but I can see them using Thanos again. Maybe without the gauntlet. Maybe not. I hear he wins either way. Who cares? Possible Marvel newcomers that could fight Beerus include Phoenix and Gore the God Butcher. I barely know Gore and I don't care about Phoenix. I don't know how fitting either match is, and I can't say I care too much about them. Maybe if the season so far wasn't already 1/3 Marvel then I'd feel differently, but as it stands I can't say I'd care too much about them, especially if Beerus loses to either of them, which he likely would from what I've heard. Alright, now let's talk about possible opponents that come from movies. I've only been able to come up with one, and that's none other than Tai Lung. If you couldn't see this coming then I don't even know what to tell you. Tai Lung needs to fight every character on every versus show. Beerus might be god fucking knows how much stronger, faster, more durable etc, but also this is an extremely close match and Tai Lung could easily win with his pressure point attacks. Be sure to go and tell Mr. Breaker that you want to see this match so that he does it before he does 200 more Vincent matches. Alright, back to serious fights now. Let's take a look at possible Beerus opponents that come from video games. Arceus is the obvious one I've seen tossed around a lot. I love Pokemon a lot and I'd love to see Death Battle use more characters from it. But Beerus vs Arceus just isn't the right match for either of them. Beerus is the kind of character that would need someone to play off, and I don't think he could banter well with Arceus. On the flip side, Arceus has a lot of different moves that can be used to come up with a multitude of combos in the animation to make for a visually interesting, dynamic fight scene. But the problem is that all of its good moves are learned through TMs. With other Pokemon, they've exclusively used their level up moves unless it's a specific trainer's Pokemon, which would be a problem here since Arceus has a fucking boring level up move pool. Giratina is another possible Pokemon opponent who has a more interesting natural moveset than Arceus does, but still has the same issue of Beerus not being able to banter with them. Besides, they have better opponents anyway. Arceus vs Amaterasu is definitely better than either of them against Beerus. And yes, Amaterasu is also a possible opponent. It has animation potential, but it again has no potential for banter between them, and it's far more stompy. Arceus and Giratina are debatable on if they could win against Beerus depending on what you believe, but from what I hear on Amaterasu it's pretty open and shut that she loses. Azura is also an opponent I've seen thrown around. But Broly is a way better match for him, and Beerus could probably just erase him before he can access any of his higher forms. Chakravartin is another Azura's Wrath character I've heard suggested because of he and Beerus being polar opposite deities, but you still have the size difference issue that Galactus has. Beerus still probably also wins, and I can't see them interacting much verbally. I've also been asked to include Kratos as a possibility. I can't see this one happening at all, but I told Light Combo Breaker I would include him so you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. Kratos is a pain to use in Versus and him fighting Beerus is a blowout. A total stomp. Who it's a stomp for depends on whether or not you believe multiversal Kratos. If you do, then he wins. If you don't, then Beerus has stopped characters stronger than him with his mere presence before. But Kratos is not the biggest headache to use in Versus. Let's discuss the possibility of a Dragon Ball vs Sonic fight. Everyone's favorite. There are 2 Sonic matches for Beerus I've seen of equal levels of fairness. Big the Cat and Solaris. Unironically, Big gets annihilated if their stats from Mario vs Sonic are anything to go by. Solaris could stand a better chance though. Death Battle did say that Solaris was universal in a side tab and that Sonic just didn't scale to him. So it's entirely possible that they could have Beerus lose if they did this match. I won't weigh in with who I actually think should win though, because I'd rather sit through Ginger Deadman vs Evil Bong and the worst CFC episode back to back before I'd try and offer any views on Sonic characters in Versus. But unironically, out of these 2 options, I'd prefer Beerus vs Big. That one at least has comedic potential. Solaris isn't a character. Solaris is just an obstacle for other characters to overcome. There's basically zero possibility for any good dialogue in the fight. Taboo from Smash Bros. Brawl is also listed as a possible opponent on the Death Battle fanon wiki. Sure, why not? Both of them can stomp all over universal characters, so they might be in a similar ballpark of strength, and Taboo's wide variety of powers could make for a fun fight. But the problem with this one is again the lack of possibility for Beerus to banter with his opponent. Now for one last video game opponent. We have a character I'd actually be fine with Beerus fighting. Cartoon Fight Club has already done Beerus vs Jedah Dohma and I actually really enjoyed it. It for sure shat the bed in regards to explaining the verdict, but I really enjoyed the animation portion. The characters had good banter and the action was fun to watch. I feel like Death Battle could really expand on this fight and make it something special with higher budget animation, a better written analysis and a thumbnail where Beerus isn't pregnant. I'd actually be really interested to see how they'd go about the result. From my understanding, Beerus is way above Jedah in terms of stats, but also has no way to kill Jedah, who has come back from existence erasure before. It's an interesting match that I'd be down to see them do. Now on to opponents from other anime series. I don't know anything about any of the characters I'm about to bring up. I didn't know what one of them looked like until a few hours ago, and I still don't know what one of the others looks like as of the time I'm writing this. So I won't be commenting on how good the matches are or who wins. First off is Hades from Senseiya. Legitimately one of the edgiest looking characters I've seen in a while. I'm sure he's a fine enough character in his series, but if my boy Beerus lost to the physical manifestation of Rewind Rumble's dialogue for the one above all, then I would be big sad. Sailor Galaxia is another one I've heard. Still can't put a face to that name, and I won't until I get to editing this. Don't care, didn't ask, boomstick time. And then there's Gilgamesh from Fate. I don't know shit about this character or his series. Very evident from the fact that I have him in the anime characters segment when apparently I've been informed that Fate was originally a video game. Oops. But my good chum Nemo Simp Blood Rice knows him pretty well, so I'll pass the mic to him for a few minutes.
What's this? A human voice on Biffweed's channel? Sacrilege. That's probably happened in the past. I mean, what do you think? I follow all of his stuff? Anyway, so Gilgamesh from Fate. I don't think it's too difficult to see the general connections here. They're not too deep, but they're there. They're both arrogant and divine characters who are so far beyond the main protagonist and the majority of the cast that they barely ever use their full power. They look down on others, though there are very, very rare occasions where they might show a bit of a kinder side, and with Gilgamesh it is extremely rare. Of course, the difference is that Beerus has never shown his full power, but then Beerus has also been surpassed by a lot of characters, while the amount of characters who are stronger than Gilgamesh in Fate is very small, and very rare to see any of them. However, I really don't think this episode's happening, and I don't want it to happen. One of the reasons I don't want it to happen is the question of who would win, which seems funny because that's the point of a death battle. Gilgamesh is a tricky character to use in a versus battle, because he has several incarnations who vary wildly in power. And a lot of what he can accomplish would come through scaling, because Gilgamesh is officially stated to be, and has shown himself to be, the strongest servant in all of Fate. The characters who are actually stronger than him are literal divine gods who sit on a higher plane of existence, and grandservants who, because they can manipulate the very system that produces servants, have a natural advantage over Gilgamesh. The only characters who have beaten him canonically in a one-on-one fight have only done so to the weaker versions of him, and usually for reasons relating to his character instead of raw power, and because the plot demands it. It's been officially stated that he lost to Saber in the Fate route because he loved her, he lost to Shiro in the Unlimited Blade Works route because he underestimated him, which is a load of bullshit, let's be honest. It's a load of bullshit. The Gates of Babylon have so much more power than Unlimited Blade Works, and also the Gates of Babylon don't drain as much magic from Gilgamesh. He could literally just pelt Shiro with hundreds, millions of swords until Shiro runs out of magic. But, you know, he didn't do that because the plot demanded it. And in Heaven's Feel, he lost because he was, careless. In fact, Sakura Matao, who at the time was beyond servants, was still afraid of Gilgamesh killing her, so she had to convert his spirit origin into magic before he ripped his way out of her body. Anyway, Gilgamesh's power is difficult to pin down. In fact, he's so difficult that he makes Beerus' power look as straightforward as Yamcha. And I mean that, because Beerus can be hard to pin the power of, but Gilgamesh is way harder. Of course, in the original story, he's got the planet-busting Enuma Elish. However, in his stronger version in Fate Zero, he can obliterate a reality marble that can manifest an army of heroes and legends who actually break time and space to appear to fight by Iskandar's side. That's a lot of power, but that's nothing compared to the absurd levels he gets in other games. In the other games, he manages to beat both Kiara Sessayoin and Bibi, one of which has power equivalent to and beyond Buddha, who could destroy the Moon Cell, and the other one literally was the Moon Cell. And if you don't know what the Moon Cell is, it contains infinite possibilities. Possibilities are parallel universes. So the Moon Cell contains infinite parallel universes. Gilgamesh is more powerful than that, and easily beaten characters who are beyond that. So he is easily within the multiversal ranges of power. Now, that's not to say he'd win against Gilgamesh. Both of them have ways to erase each other from existence, and both of them, I'd imagine, are resistant. I know Gilgamesh is immune to resistance erasure, but I don't know if Beerus is, but he probably is, right? It's like they both have ways around each other's hacks, and because like Gilgamesh has 10 crowns EX, which makes him immune to being hurt. But my problem is that like Death Battle would likely consider all of his external material as an outlier, and they'd consider the Fate storyline the primary version, which is just simply not the case. They're going to likely consider it an outlier or inconsistent with the most commonly known form of the character. Death Battle have demonstrated in the past thorough misunderstandings of things like this, such as when they composited 4 different Optimus Primes into one, and even early in this season, when they used Legends to back up canon material under the pretense that Legends and canon are similar levels of power, which is just false. So I'd be very concerned that they would misunderstand the Nasuverse and just not get how Gilgamesh is so much stronger at his peak. So I don't really want them to touch Gilgamesh, and I doubt they will. There are better matches for Gilgamesh, like thematically there's Shao Kahn, even though that's a stomp, even if you highball Kahn to the levels of the Elder Gods. Or Algol, who when in the Astral Chaos has limits that even he doesn't know. And there are better matches for Beerus that I see more likely to happen anyway, that I'm sure Biff's going to talk about. Well, he doesn't really know what I've typed up here, what I'm saying. So I'm hoping he's going to bring up what I'm thinking of. And as a friend of the researcher behind Beerus' opponent, and having talked in a different contest completely unrelated to the Beerus fight about Gilgamesh with him, I'm very certain that Gilgamesh is not going to be Beerus' opponent. Additionally, I believe they sooner use Saber from Fate before they touch Gilgamesh. That was a bunch of words, but essentially Gilgamesh's power is hard to pin down. Gilgamesh is inconsistent between versions because of the nature of his character, but the fact that they're all the same spirit origin means that they're all the same character, and they all can be applied, and Death Battle are not going to use him anyway, so this whole conversation was pointless.
Now you can go back to the Texas Beach voice, Biff. You can take over now, you fucking MLG avocado looking motherfucker.
Well, actual charismatic voice acting on this channel. Don't get used to it, but do go and subscribe to Nemesis. He made his own version of this video, which I will link in the description. It will also be in the pinned comment unless I see another one that's just such a banger that I have to replace it. Anyway, there's only a few more characters I have left to go over, including my favorite opponent for Beerus. And these are all cartoon characters. The first of which is Nicole Watterson. This just seems like a funny match with good potential for banter in the fight. Beerus probably wins, but it would be a really fun episode and I'd be interested to see how Death Battle would tackle Gumball characters. Then there's Antipops. Universus did this match near the end of its run to much controversy. I don't know who should win, nor do I particularly care. Antipops just has a lot of potential to make for a visually interesting fight with his reality warping. The size difference of his giant form wouldn't be as much of an issue as with others since he can control his size at will and isn't just constantly above planet size like Galactus or Azura's destructor form. There is one main issue I see with this fight though, and that's that I can't see it being animated in a style that suits both of them. Antipops doesn't have any sprites as far as I'm aware. Beerus doesn't seem like he'd fit well in a cartoony 2D style and Antipops would not work in 3D at all. But if they could manage to make it work somehow, I'd be all for it happening. But now for my personal favorite Beerus match. It would have to be one with great animation potential. Beerus would need to be able to banter with his opponent and it should be an interesting match to hear an analysis for. And no other Beerus matches I've seen have all three of these qualities to the same extent as Beerus vs Bill Cipher. I don't know who should win, but I honestly don't care. This match has absolutely endless possibility in terms of what they could do in the fight. Bill can do basically whatever they want him to. They could even have him change the animation style mid-fight. Not only that, but there's so much potential for mid-fight banter. Beerus and Bill are really funny characters and they could play off each other really well. And in terms of the analysis, Bill would be a really interesting one to see them tackle. There are so many pitfalls that they could fall into with him. But I've heard who's researching Beerus's opponent. And if Bill is the character he's up against, then I trust that he's smart enough to not fall into those research pitfalls. I didn't care much for this match much at first, but it's really grown on me over time. It uses two of my favorite characters of all time, one of which is from one of my favorite cartoons of all time, and has potential to be a visually interesting, funny, well-written episode that might even rival my all-time favorites. I said back in my Dream Season video that Asriel was my most wanted opponent for Bill, but if I could go back and change that match to Bill vs Beerus, I absolutely would. Or maybe I wouldn't, since 4 Dragon Ball matches in a single season might be a bit much. Anyway, that's my summarized, disjointed thoughts on who Beerus could fight. Hopefully you all enjoyed this. Thanks again to Nemesis for making the Beerus vs Gilgamesh section. His stuff is linked in the description. Now I'm going to go and copy another one of his videos. I'll see you then.